between nostalgia and the wonderful destiny. Upon meeting the new intern, the lawyer was paralyzed by the resemblance to his late wife and the scar on her arm. In the silence of an office illuminated only by the dim light of a lamp, Lawyer Enrique stared at the photo of his late wife. His eyes carried a subtle yet constant sadness. It had been 5 years since she had passed, and despite the time, he still felt the void of her absence. That night, as Enrique sat in his armchair staring at the photo of his deceased wife, his mind drifted to the happy days they had shared together. Clara was the center of his world, a determined woman with brilliant intelligence and a sarcastic sense of humor that always brightened even the toughest days. He remembered the day she suffered the domestic accident that left the scar on her arm. They were cooking together, a rare occurrence given their busy schedules. Clara teased him about his complete lack of cooking skills. "Enrique, if we depended on you for food, I think we would either starve or suffer from food poisoning," she said, laughing. He laughed until the moment the knife slipped off the counter and struck her arm. There were minutes of panic, but Clara handled the situation calmly, as always. It was an ordinary afternoon when she showed up. The office door opened, and with a shy smile, a young woman entered. "Dr. Enrique? Nice to meet you. My name is Beatriz. I'm the new intern." Enrique froze. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Her face was hauntingly familiar. The hair, the smile, even the tone of her voice seemed to echo memories of his wife. But it was when he noticed the discreet scar on her arm that he felt the ground disappear beneath him. "This is impossible," he thought, as he greeted her with a voice that tried to hide the tremor. These memories were so vivid they hurt. And now, Beatriz, with that identical scar and the same mannerisms, seemed to bring Clara back to life. Was it just a coincidence? Or was something inexplicable happening? Do you believe in coincidences or think everything in life has a purpose? Keep watching to find out how this touching story unfolds. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's explore this journey of feelings and discoveries together. In the following days, Enrique tried to ignore the impact that Beatriz had on him. He struggled to stay focused on work, but with every interaction with her, it felt as if his mind was being thrust back into the past. Beatriz was dedicated, curious, and full of enthusiasm. In meetings, she took detailed notes and asked precise questions. Her determined and attentive nature quickly won over her colleagues, but it was with Enrique that she seemed to connect in a special way. One afternoon, while they were reviewing documents in his office, Beatriz did something that left him even more intrigued. After finishing a technical explanation, she smiled and said, "You're right, Enrique. The world belongs to the bold, but the cautious survive." Enrique paused. That was a phrase his wife used to say often. His heart raced, but he pretended he hadn't noticed. "It can't be," he thought. "This is just a coincidence." Enrique decided to dive into work to silence his thoughts, and Beatriz's presence became his greatest distraction, both good and bad. They began working on a particularly challenging case involving an unjustly accused client. During the hours they spent together in the office, Beatriz demonstrated impressive intuition. She pointed out details that even Enrique had overlooked. "Sometimes, I feel like I've lived this before, you know?" Beatriz said, laughing, as she flipped through one of the documents. Enrique looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain it. It's like I've already sat in this room, working on this case, with you." Enrique swallowed hard. That familiar feeling he had also experienced didn't seem to be one-sided. The case they were working on escalated. It became a complex legal battle, involving many sleepless nights. Enrique and Beatriz grew closer, forming an unbeatable team. But amid the tense moments, there were also light-hearted ones. Like the time Beatriz spilled coffee on his papers and laughed at herself. "This is so typical of me. Clara used to say I was clumsy like this too," she exclaimed without realizing. Enrique turned pale. "What did you say?" "Oh, sorry, Enrique. I don't know why I mentioned Clara. I think I just read something with that name recently." Enrique shook his head, trying not to be affected. But the impression that there was more than mere coincidence began to consume his thoughts. As the weeks went by, Enrique started to notice that his admiration for Beatriz was growing. He felt revitalized by her presence, as if she had brought light to the darkest corners of his life. But at the same time, this feeling came with guilt. "Am I in love?" he silently wondered. "Or am I just projecting onto her what I had with my wife?" These questions tormented him. At night, he could hardly sleep. On workdays, his mind often drifted while Beatriz spoke animatedly about a case. Beatriz, on the other hand, seemed completely unaware of the whirlwind of emotions that Enrique was feeling. To her, he was a mentor, a guide helping her become better each day. What if you were in Enrique's place? How would you deal with such confusing feelings and a situation so mysterious? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're curious to know what you would do. Enrique tried to hide his feelings, but the daily interaction with Beatriz made it increasingly difficult. One day, while they were reviewing a complicated case together, she casually remarked, "Enrique, you're like a book of wisdom. Every conversation with you is a lesson I will never forget." He smiled, but his heart raced. Simple words like that, spoken with such naturalness, hit him hard. He wanted to say something, anything to express how much she already meant to him, but he held back. That night, alone at home, Enrique reflected on the situation. "What am I doing?" he thought. "She trusts me, sees me as a mentor. I can't ruin this with my feelings." Enrique and Beatriz were taken aback by a case that deeply touched their emotions. A young couple was struggling to keep custody of their child against the mother's family, who claimed they were unfit to care for the child due to financial instability. As they worked on the case, Beatriz shared a personal story that Enrique had never heard before. "You know, Enrique, my father passed away when I was young. My mother always said he was the best person she ever knew. Sometimes, I feel like I grew up looking for someone to fill that void. But of course, no one can." Enrique felt a pang in his heart. Perhaps this vulnerability was another bond connecting them. The case was a success, thanks to their teamwork. During the celebration, Beatriz raised a glass and said, "To the best mentor and partner I could ask for." Enrique smiled, but he knew her meaning was different from what he wished it to be. But fate seemed to be playing with him. A few days later, as they finished another workday, Beatriz turned to him with a radiant smile. "Enrique, what do you think about having dinner together tomorrow? I want to celebrate a small milestone. I just closed my first case on my own." Enrique was surprised. He tried to hide the excitement he felt, but he couldn't prevent the sparkle in his eyes. "Of course, Beatriz. It will be a pleasure." As he left the office that night, Enrique was beaming. For the first time in years, he felt something close to happiness. On the day of the dinner, Enrique spent hours choosing what to wear. He looked at himself in the mirror several times, adjusting his suit and straightening his tie. "It's just a dinner between colleagues," he repeated to himself. But deep down, he knew he was hoping for something more. As he prepared for the dinner, Enrique talked to himself in the mirror. "Don't mess this up, Enrique. It's just a dinner. Be the friend she needs." But his heart was telling him something else. When he arrived at the restaurant, he found Beatriz already waiting for him. She looked stunning, elegantly dressed while still maintaining her simple charm. Enrique's heart raced at the sight of her. As they talked, laughed, and celebrated, Enrique felt it was the perfect moment. He was going to confess his feelings. Beatriz. He began, his voice trembling. But before he could continue, Beatriz looked toward the entrance of the restaurant, waving excitedly. "Oh, he's here." Enrique turned, confused. A young, handsome man was approaching their table. "Enrique, I want you to meet Gabriel, my fiancé." The words hit him like a blow. Enrique felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He managed to smile and shake the fiancé's hand, but inside, he was shattered. The moment in the restaurant, with the arrival of Gabriel, Beatriz's fiancé, was devastating. Enrique, however, maintained his composure until the end of the dinner. He didn't want Beatriz to notice his pain. He left the restaurant slowly, with a vacant look. The happiness he felt when accepting the dinner invitation now seemed like a distant dream. Beatriz's words echoed in his mind. "My fiancé." He got into his car and sat there for long minutes, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at himself for having built up so many expectations, sadness at realizing he never had a real chance, and above all, an overwhelming sense of loneliness. When he got home, he sat in the office chair and picked up the photo of his late wife again. "What would you do in my place?" he asked quietly, as if waiting for a response. Tears streamed silently as he sat on the bedroom floor, holding the ring he still kept as a memento of Clara. Enrique spent the night awake. The pain was almost physical, but deep down, he knew he had to move on. The days that followed were challenging. Enrique avoided spending time alone with Beatriz, fearing his feelings would become obvious. But she soon noticed the change. "Enrique, is everything okay? You seem distant lately." He hesitated before responding. "I'm fine, Beatriz. Just a bit tired. Nothing you need to worry about." Beatriz looked at him with concern but didn't press him. She valued their friendship too much to push. It was then that Enrique made a decision. If he couldn't have her as a romantic partner, he would do everything to be the best friend and mentor she could have. He would use his experience to help her achieve the success she deserved. He couldn't let his feelings for Beatriz interfere with her life. More than ever, he wanted to see her happy, even if it meant sacrificing his own desires. He dedicated himself to helping her grow, sharing everything he knew and encouraging her to go beyond what she thought was possible. The bond between them grew even stronger, but now purely as friends and professional partners. Over time, Enrique found in mentoring Beatriz a new reason to move forward. He dedicated himself to training her and challenging her to grow as a lawyer. The two continued to work together on important cases, and their partnership became legendary in the firm. However, the coincidences continued to intrigue him. One day, while discussing a case, Beatriz mentioned a detail about a trip that Enrique and his wife had taken years ago. It was at an inn with that strong eucalyptus smell, wasn't it? Enrique's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" Beatriz laughed. "I don't know. I just felt it was the kind of place where you would be with someone special." This type of situation happened frequently. Small details, phrases, or gestures from Beatriz seemed to bring forth memories of his wife. Enrique began to wonder if there was something greater behind that inexplicable connection. On a rainy afternoon, while organizing the office, Beatriz found an old photo album. Upon opening it, she saw images of Clara. "Is this Clara?" she asked, surprised. Enrique nodded, and Beatriz looked at the photo with an expression he couldn't decipher. Enrique, I don't want to sound strange, but I feel like I know her. It's a feeling I can't explain. Enrique sighed. Maybe you have something of hers in you, Beatriz. Something that life put in my path for a reason. Time passed, and the day of Beatriz's wedding arrived. Enrique was invited to walk her down the aisle since her father had passed away years earlier. Although it was a bittersweet moment, he accepted the invitation with gratitude. As he watched her walk down the church aisle, dressed in white and with a radiant smile, Enrique felt a mix of sadness and pride. He knew that despite everything, he had found in Beatriz a friendship that changed his life forever. Enrique felt a mix of emotions. He knew he was about to lose something special, but he was also determined to be the support that Beatriz needed. As they waited at the altar, she squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you, Enrique. I don't know what I would do without you." He smiled but felt a pang of pain in his chest. When he handed Beatriz over to her fiancé, he did so with a sincere smile. As she walked down the aisle, he realized he had finally found peace. It wasn't about what he had lost, but about what he had gained, the chance to help someone who brought new meaning to his life. During the ceremony, as he observed the love between Beatriz and Gabriel, he finally found peace. He knew that his connection with her was unique, but that fate had other plans. After Beatriz's wedding was announced, Enrique began to devote himself to work with even more diligence. He knew he couldn't let his feelings compromise his professional relationship and, above all, his friendship with her. Beatriz, on the other hand, noticed that Enrique was more reserved. He no longer made the usual jokes and avoided the long afternoon coffees that had become a tradition between them. One afternoon, while they were working on yet another complicated case, Beatriz decided to confront him. "Enrique, is everything okay? You seem different lately." He hesitated but smiled to lighten the mood. "I'm fine, Beatriz. Maybe I'm just more tired than usual." She wasn't convinced, but she didn't press the issue. However, deep down, she felt that there was something he wasn't saying. Despite trying to move on, Enrique couldn't stop thinking about the coincidences between Beatriz and Clara. He spent hours mentally analyzing every detail. The scar was identical. The phrases and gestures seemed to come directly from his late wife. One lonely night, Enrique found Clara's journal hidden in an old drawer. He decided to reread some passages, seeking an explanation for his restlessness. On one of the pages, Clara had written, "If one day I'm no longer here, I hope you find someone who brings back the sparkle in your eyes, Enrique. Love can appear in unexpected ways." He closed the journal, emotional. Could Beatriz be that someone? Or was the connection merely a product of his unresolved longing? Months after the wedding, Enrique received an unexpected letter from Beatriz. "Enrique, you never told me much about Clara, but I feel like she is always present in our conversations, in some way. Thank you for being such an important part of my life. You are undoubtedly one of the reasons I have become who I am today. With affection, Beatriz." He kept the letter in a drawer next to Clara's journal. Enrique realized that, in some way, his late wife and Beatriz were connected, but he would never know how. Life brings us people who leave deep marks on our journey. Some come to teach us, others to transform us. Enrique found in Beatriz not just an intern, but a companion who brought forth memories of the past and hope for the future. And you? Have you ever had someone enter your life and change everything? Leave your comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell for more emotional stories. Because sometimes, the coincidences of life have more meaning than we can imagine.